Hi, and welcome to the first episode of Naked Facilitator, a podcast brought to you by Future Skills Academy. I'm Morgan Duda, and today I'm joined with a guest who's an expert in facilitation. And today we're going to be talking about the hook.
Yes, we're going to be talking about the hook. So thank you for inviting me, Morgan. I'm Alwin, and I'm the author of Captains of Leadership and Unlock Collective Genius, two books. One book focusing on facilitators or facilitation, and the other book focusing on participants to try and help with co-creation. And the hook is actually a chapter in the second book.
Yeah.
So
And you
yeah,
just explained it to me. And as a facilitator, it's something that had been hiding beneath the surface, but it hadn't been put into words before. So can you explain what the hook is?
yeah, yeah. I'll try to explain it in a nutshell. Um, so what I've seen is in big organizations whom I've worked with that there often are big purpose campaigns. And I've also noticed how people have a hard time relating to big purpose campaigns because they are usually about the big goals organizations have and
Mhm.
not necessarily very relatable to the day to day of a specific person. And then I also noticed that a lot of people who set up workshops and meetings, they don't really do the effort of clearly showing what is the reason of the meeting. Often people have on their to-do list something needs to be figured out. They just, invite people to meetings so they can scratch it off the to-do list, not saying
Yeah.
why people should be there. So you would have people that are often seeking purpose in what they do on a bigger scale in an organization, but also smaller scale meeting and workshops. And it got me thinking, do we need to expect organizers, facilitators, or companies to tell us what the purpose should be and why we should be engaged into something? And the hook is rather suggesting that what if everybody as a participant would already ask themselves in each shared moment they have throughout the day, what moves me about this moment? Why can this matter or how can this matter to me? And not in a skeptical way, right? Not why should this matter to me, but rather, what could I get out of this? What is it from this moment that really speaks to me? Just so that when they can describe that for themselves, they will feel much more connected to that moment and therefore have an easier time investing their attention. And as a
Yeah.
facilitator, that's what you want, right? You want people that come into your space and they are motivated and they want to be engaged. And but as they often don't do that, ask themselves, how can this matter to me?
Mhm.
Maybe, a facilitator could also help there, I guess, help people to find their personal hook. Um, so
Yeah.
that's what the chapter describes a bit. Having a
Okay.
different view on the hook or purpose.
Yeah, and I think it's so because we've all been in facilitating situations where it's very clear that maybe one or two or some of the participants are motivated, they're excited, they're engaged, and then some of the other participants are less enthusiastic.
Yeah.
And so I think if there were a way for the facilitators to either unlock that or inspire
Yes.
that before even attending the session, so that you could, that participant could walk into the room and say, "Yeah, this is why I'm here."
Well, and I think a facilitator could already give a hint. When you invite people or when there's communication up front, you can use some anecdotes related to the topic. You can use statistics, you can use quotes, you can use strong statements that stir up controversy where people have an opinion about. You can already include that in your communication up front so people get triggered to look for why it has meaning because they might have an opinion, right? They might want to speak out in the workshop, or that anecdote is something they also experienced, and so you help them a little bit before your session to already find personal meaning about the session so they come in engaged. But
Okay. And
yeah,
do you
that,
have any examples of you consciously using this, or maybe some small
yeah.
stories of you consciously using
Oh
this and
yeah.
then the impact it's had?
Oh,
Enlighten us.
I've got something I've been doing the last 2 years, which is so lovely because it always results in a fantastic bonding moment with the group. And I'll share my secret, but I'll try to keep it as short as possible. I call it the spirit of collectivity. And when people arrive in a room to work together, there isn't necessarily this sense of collectivity. the sense of that we're all very much connected to this topic and we all want to work together to create some kind of better reality or improvement around it.
Hmm.
And the spirit of collectivity is an activity I do in the beginning where I ask everybody to just take a minute and think about, how can this really matter to me personally? What moves me about the fact that I'm sitting here with these other people working on this topic?
Hmm.
And then, and it's, I guess that's not surprising yet for most facilitators. You have check-ins and then inclusivity activities, all that stuff. But if you ask this and you give them a moment to talk about it, and then you have them connect with just one other person to share this, then suddenly you see this strange magic happening, because it's not only about my personal meaning that I found, but it's also listening to the other person. And especially when it's different, when the other person is explaining a different reason why it matters to them, and it kind of triggers my imagination. And maybe that's also something on top of what I taught that matters to me. It also potentially matters to me, and the other way around. And in that way, we're empathizing with each other around the meaning we find in that moment. And that short moment of interaction suddenly helps people realize, hey, the fact that we're sitting here matters to those other people. If it matters to those other people, then it should definitely matter to me. And if I understand how important this is to them, I can't be, the one being like, "Oh, it doesn't. I don't care about it. I'm indifferent." It seems to be a really nice moment we have here. So it immediately creates this nice atmosphere and bonding moment before you start collaborating. And then I have them call it out here and there. Not all of them, is too much, but
Hmm.
here and there. And I especially ask them, "Can you tell me what your neighbor said when you talked to them? What really meant something to them?" Typical facilitation technique. And especially if that resonates with you. So I kind of already in the question make sure that they empathize. And then they share with me, and I stick it against the wall of the spirit of collectivity. And I officially open the workshop saying, look, this is our wall of collectivity. It represents our collectivity. We're here together to have a task, a shared responsibility, and it means something to us clearly. So nobody can escape anymore from, feeling meaning towards that moment.
Yeah, and it's simple in its explanation and in the practice to execute this idea is very simple, but I can also imagine that it has quite a profound effect. Because, like you said, there's no escaping anymore. Because maybe you just showed up because it was on your agenda, but maybe your neighbor's there and it's really important to them, and if you walk away, you're now
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You want to live up to their expectations, right? It's kind of a
Yeah.
shame if they find it so important, then you're gonna be like the nagging person. Ah, do I really have to spend my time here? Say, yeah. And
And
it
having
also,
them
no, sorry, it,
I was
it
gonna say
equalizes.
having them share with their neighbor also makes puts a spotlight on it, so,
It
yeah.
puts a spotlight on it,
Yeah,
definitely.
yeah.
And
You're
whether a C-level person sits in there, a manager, or somebody who has much more of a vertical expertise, you know, if they talk about what it means to them, it's very personal. So it's not
Mhm.
what does it mean to my title, it is what does it mean to me as a person that I'm asking. And that's a big difference. I'm not asking for a CEO to say, this has meaning for me because the solutions will cut costs and we need that, because, that's not what the question. The question is, how does that move you? So the CEO might say, if,
Mhm.
I'm now taking the example of a C-level person, just,
Yeah,
they might say, well, it would be lovely to understand from different perspectives, about this topic, because I'm always looking at it from I need to have a macro view and managing everybody and looking at
sure.
the, and more further away in the future strategic. But I like to understand different perspectives, and that really is important for me. So I am still and making decisions based in reality and not in this high level. I'm just making it up. But then,
Yeah,
that kind of testimonials, you already immediately have the proper space for collaboration created because everybody is on the same level. It's vulnerable. Yeah, it's very
exactly.
simple.
Yeah, yeah, and when you were telling that story, it reminded me of a moment I went to a happiness conference hosted by my employer, and we're quite a big organization, a few thousand employees, I think. And so, we had people in all different positions showing up, and they asked, "Why are you here today?" Right? Which is essentially the hook, right? And it
Which is
was
the hook.
And it was just a it wasn't a co-creative or collaborative session. It was more a happiness conference. You could choose the different little areas of happiness you wanted to learn more about. But even them hearing all the different positions and skills and backgrounds that these people were coming from, hearing their reason made it so much more personal. And you think, okay, happiness is important to everyone. I'm not going to learn that much. But people are sharing really important connecting stories. It was really
Well,
beautiful.
and the secret, Morgan, that I figured out only recently, and I think this is such an important message to people in HR, it's because you share the fact that it moves you, that you feel the bonding. It's not because it is the same reason it moves you. And that is super important to realize. It's like being at a concert, watching a band, and I love the band because they might be influenced by a certain type of music, but the other person loves the band because they just like their style and the way they dress. And so we don't have the same reason, but the fact that I love the band and that person loves the band creates the bonding. So there's no point in doing these company-wide big purpose campaigns trying to unify the whole company under one reason why it's
Hmm.
you have to, just give people the feeling that they all care, and that's enough, but in their own way,
Yeah,
right? Yeah.
yeah, yeah. The spirit of collectivity. That's really
Spirit of
cool.
collectivity.
That's
Yeah,
really
and
powerful. Yeah.
what I also figured out was, and this is, I guess, specifically towards facilitators, when you do such a workshop in a big organization or an organization where titles matter, where there's
Hmm.
some level of hierarchy,
Yeah.
you need to in the beginning make sure people step away from their identity. Otherwise, if you don't do that in the beginning, it's just going to be a collaboration between titles.
Yeah.
And what you want is a collaboration between people. And when you ask them about their personal meaning, what moves them, and you bring up some vulnerability, it's not the title anymore. It's suddenly the person they see behind the identity that they're holding up. And
Mm,
that's where the magic lies in collectivity, right? That's
yeah.
how, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, really cool. And was there how long, I mean, you've been facilitating at least a few years, but how long did it take for you to realize that this was a really powerful, transformative thing to incorporate?
Well, I first started working with all kinds of methodologies, of which design thinking was one I worked with most. And because of the methodologies, I understood how important facilitation was. And it was at that moment when I understood that the only way to make collaboration impactful and successful is to have really good facilitation. And now, there's other stuff I think you also need. But at that point, there was facilitation. That's when I started observing a lot how team dynamics were different in different environments and
Hmm.
different team constellations, different industries, companies. And each time I had the opportunity, the privilege to facilitate, um, I was facilitating, but at the same time writing down notes and studying people's
Yeah.
behaviors. And that's when I noticed like people have a hard time getting towards the collectivity. There's a lot of stuff happening outside that workshop room
Yes.
before they came in that created separation,
Hmm.
potential friction.
Yeah.
And they're coming in with all that, how do you say
Baggage.
it? Yeah, all the baggage.
Yeah.
And you have to somehow, often without them knowing it in a subtle way, have them put down their backpack, you know,
Mm,
put it
yeah.
down. This is a different dimension, a different universe. It's not the company we're in. This is the facilitator space. And it's because of watching so many people struggle and trying to figure out as a facilitator, how can I help there to find that bonding moment that I figured out, hey, wait a second. If I help them take down their backpack and if I help them to become a little bit more vulnerable, and if I do that in a way where they connect to the topic and each other, so not only
Hmm.
to each other, to the topic to each other, then, yeah, minute in short answer, I think that's probably 4 years ago, before
Okay.
COVID still. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Oh, very cool. Yeah, I'm really curious to also implement this because it's something so small and I'm teaching. So it'd be so simple to ask a student, okay, why did you choose this class?
Yeah.
What made you show up this week? Something like
Well,
that.
it's culture is built on language. And sometimes we need to create a language for concepts that are necessary, especially for co-creation. So
Mhm.
if you could just at one point everybody understands the concept and you would say, "Hey, did you find your hook? Hey, what's your hook? Hey, are you hooked in today?" If it becomes language, then it becomes common sense in the end. That's
Yeah,
that's what you want. Yeah. Becomes
cool.
culture.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Hooking people up. No, that's a different
Yeah.
phrase.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a different
Are
phrase.
you hooked in? That's the phrase we want.
I use that in the book because I'm not a native English speaker. So at one point I was writing it, yeah, hooking up to the topic or hooking up to each other. And my editor was like, no, 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 that is not what we're going to use. It means something completely different.
When language goes wrong.
Exactly.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Well, these have been the 15 minutes we've been allowed
Yes.
for the Naked Facilitator, but I'm really excited about the hook. Thank you so much for sharing.